Hello. For this week's module, we were asked to discuss 4 types of differential reinforcement procedures. I'm going to define them and provide examples and how I would use them in a classroom. The first one is a DRI, also known as incompatible behavior. To me, this one means that you reinforce the student to do the opposite of the undesired behavior. So maybe the student is talking and disrupting the class or yelling out answers. Instead of yelling out answers, you reinforce them to raise their hand instead of yelling or disrupting the class. That could be an example of an incompatible behavior, or DRI. The second one is DRA. A DRA is also known as alternative behavior, and basically what happens is the student is doing something maybe disruptive or something that is an undesired behavior, and the teacher is changing that behavior by giving them something else to depend on. So an example I thought of for this was, it might not be a good one, but some students that I have seen at school have bands on their chairs, and I remember one specific student would make a lot of noise. He wore boots to school, and his boots were really loud, and you could hear him tap, 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 tap. And the teacher put a band around the bottom of his the feet on the chair, and she taught him to use that instead of the floor. And over time, you couldn't hear that tap, 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 tap anymore. It was quieter, and he was able to use that. So just changing the bad behavior and switching it to another behavior, a desired behavior, would be an alternative behavior. Changing the bad behavior to an alternative desired behavior. And then we have DRO, which is also known as other behavior. So basically in this one, the student is doing something that it might be undesired, and we try to reinforce the student to towards another behavior besides what they're doing. So maybe they are I don't know, maybe they're scratching their head, and you don't want them to do that. So you try to reinforce a new behavior to get them to stop. The next one, or the last one actually, is a DRL, low rates of behavior. This is where it's students have a long span of time and doing something, and basically what we're doing here is the student is frequently showing disruptive behaviors, and instead of having them be focused for the whole period of that subject, it's separated into parts. So let's just say the class lasts for 60 minutes and the child can't focus that 60 minutes. So we split it up into 10-minute intervals, or actually it'd be easier to say 30-minute. Let's say the class is 30 minutes, and we separate the time that they stay focused into 10-minute intervals. And then after the 10 minutes, they get a reinforcement. And then over time, the time gets larger as they improve. That's how I see DRL. I would use these. How would I use these in a classroom? I think I would use the DRI for things like whenever a lot of kids like to holler out and stuff. I would definitely use that to like reinforce raising their hand and I might not, maybe at first I tell them, but then I'll start doing that, which I do that now at school. For DRA, there are kids that might be sensory or whatever. They might have other things going on. They might have sensory issues. I would have all kinds of little stress balls in my class to use if I have a student that's doing stuff that might be disruptive or not appropriate. I would just give them a stress ball and say, why don't you do this instead? That would be my alternative behavior. A DRO, I would just, I gotta think on this one for a minute. I would, I would set a timer and have the student, like, every so many minutes that they can focus, I would reinforce the behavior. So, like, or whatever it was, it might not be focus, it might be something else. Maybe they are playing with their pencil a lot and you don't want them to do that because they're not focused on what you're doing. So every 2 minutes that they're not playing with their pencil, they get a reinforcement. And they get that reinforcement if they're not engaged in that other behavior, which I should have said that earlier. I kind of messed up on that. So you reinforce the behavior if it's not the behavior that they're expressing. You don't want them to express the undesired behavior. You don't reinforce an undesired behavior in DRO. Finally, DRL, reinforcement. I would just, like, there's a student that has a hard time focusing at the school right now, and I think about that, like, especially like during math, it's really hard to stay focused for as long as that student does. So what I would do if I was the teacher, I would take 2 minutes and be like, oh, you stayed focused for this long, like set a timer, and then reinforce that, because the student, it's broken up into chunks because the student can't spend 60 minutes in a classroom working on something. It's going to be less than other kids. So that's how I feel like low rates of behavior works. It might kind of, I don't know. That's what I see anyways. So I would just do that. I would set a timer and it would be for like maybe 2 or 3 minutes and reinforce him after he shows the right behavior. So anyway, that is what all those are, and that's how I view them. So thank you.